Husband's shocking secret during pregnancy revealed. I'm Trisha Martin. At the critical moment of this story, I was 28 years old. I have always considered myself an average-looking girl. I made up for my average looks with success in sports, especially athletics, and good grades, although they may have been due more to hard work than innate intelligence. I always tried to be nice to everyone, so I was often asked out on dates, especially given my average looks. From the time I was 18 until I married Brian Martin when I was 24, I had my share of sex. I had what I consider an average libido, and so did Brian. We were very compatible in that respect, and in most other aspects. In fact, I think I would have been considered much more attractive than average if it weren't for three things. I had a significant, not vomit-inducing but hard to hide with makeup, case of acne. I had small breasts, and I had a flat body. Most guys I knew appreciated a good complexion, at least average-sized breasts, and a flat body. I had very nice legs, partly due to my athletic accomplishments, and I tried to emphasize them in my clothes. In addition, I always tried to smile to expose my perfectly straight and pearly white teeth and to distract myself from my acne. Right after college, Brian and I got decent jobs and were making more than decent money. While we weren't slackers and enjoyed life, we tried to set aside a significant portion of our income to buy a house when we had kids. I worked for a large company that made a ton of money and had a great health care and family vacation plan, which is one of the reasons I accepted a job offer there when I had other offers that paid more money. After 3.5 years of marriage, Brian and I decided it was time to start a family. We were happy with the upscale garden complex we were living in, and we were in no hurry to move into a house before the baby was born. We planned to find a suitable house and move when our firstborn was 10 to 14 months old. I would get 4 paid months of maternity leave after the birth and could take another 3 months without pay, but without compromising my chances for promotion if I wanted to. We had nice neighbors in our garden apartment complex. Most of them were married couples with 1 or 2 children or planning to have them soon. Our neighbors were a very nice couple named Kurt and Brittany Swanson. They were the only friends we had who didn't seem to be planning on having kids, at least in the near future, but that didn't stop us or our other friendly neighbors from getting along with them. Kurt ran a successful online business out of his apartment, while Brittany worked as a buyer for a major department store and traveled extensively. Kurt and I got along especially well because of our athletic backgrounds. He was a javelin thrower in college and was even an alternate on the 2012 U.S. Olympic team. In college, he also ran the 400 meters, an unusual combination. I also ran the 400 meters and was the conference long jump champion in college. We ran together from time to time. Although we were friends, our relationship was strictly platonic, and I couldn't imagine otherwise, especially since Brittany had the perfect complexion, a beautiful face, probably a D-cup, and a really slender body, and Kurt was twice as handsome as any guy I'd ever dated. A few months before my 28th birthday, I had my IUD removed and became pregnant shortly thereafter. Strange things happened while doing so. Maybe they weren't that strange in the least, but how dramatic they were was definitely strange. By the time I was 7 months pregnant, my acne was completely gone. I didn't even have any acne marks left on my face. The few spots that remained were easily concealed with makeup. My breasts increased by 2 whole sizes and became even bigger. My libido increased significantly, so that I thought about sex at least 3 times more often than before. My energy level decreased significantly. When I exercised, and I continued to exercise, but only with exercises approved by my OBGYN, I felt good. But afterward, I was so tired that I often passed out right after showering and napped for at least an hour. Of course, my belly got bigger too, although the doctor said I gained weight moderately so that the baby would be healthy, but so that it wouldn't be too hard for me to get back into shape after he was born. The reaction of men from all walks of life to my increased size was sometimes amusing, sometimes grossing me out, sometimes thought-provoking, and most often just baffling. However, There was almost no guy who didn't react in any way at all. Brian and Kurt's reactions were especially puzzling. Brian was very affectionate and treated me like a porcelain doll, but seemed to have a diminished interest in sex that often left me unattended. Kurt would go wide-eyed whenever I saw him and would invariably ask me to exercise at the same time he did, promising to reduce the intensity of his workouts to accommodate my condition. Kurt also, usually asking permission first, liked to stroke my belly. Brian seemed almost afraid to touch it and only did so when I asked him to. I went on pregnancy leave as soon as the obstetrician-gynecologist predicted I was in my 7th month. I had been slamming around the apartment and shopping, getting everything ready for the arrival of the little bambino, but being away from work gave me more time to think than was good for me. All I could think about was sex, and for almost the first time in my life, I wasn't getting enough to satisfy my libido. I was ashamed of being possessed by sex. Shortly after I took a vacation from work and still obsessing about sex, there was a knock on the door. It was Kurt, smiling, dressed in jogging shorts, tank top, and sneakers. "Hey, attractive pregnant," he started the conversation, the first time he'd called me attractive in the 2 years we'd known each other. "Join me for a run. Then we'll put on our suits and swim a few laps in the pool. The day will be warm and sunny." "I'll slow you down," I chided him, "and I'll disgust everyone with my big belly and my bathing suit." I grinned. "I have a slight ankle injury, so our speeds will be the same, and I assure you that no one with more testosterone will find you attractive," he replied with a wide grin. The fact that a handsome man like Kurt said that to me caused a series of twitches in my body. "Okay, if you move the crib I bought yesterday out of the car and put it in the 2nd bedroom, I'll change and join you," I replied. "Where are your car keys?" he asked. When I held them out to him, he stroked my stomach, this time without permission but with an even bigger smirk, and said, "Don't be long." By the time I'd changed into my gym uniform and packed my swimsuit and a change of clothes in my bag, Kurt had not only taken the crib out of the car, but had set it up in the 2nd bedroom and put the box it came in the recycling bin. "Thank you," I said. "My pleasure," he replied, handing me back my car keys. We warmed up as we walked to the pool to drop off our suit bags, and then began a slow jog along a familiar path that partially ran through the woods. Kurt was especially talkative that day and complimented us often as we walked down the path. I completely lost track of time and distance, and when we got back to the pool, I realized I had walked about a mile more than I should have. We changed into suits, and Kurt talked me into doing laps. After 10 laps, I was feeling dog-tired. Our apartment complex pool was a real Olympic-sized, half-size pool, so I swam about 250 meters. When I relaxed at the deep end, even though I was tired, the water cooled me down and supported my extra weight, so I closed my eyes and leaned my head back. I was slightly startled when I felt a hand on my stomach. Of course, it was Kurt with a satisfied smile. "Wow, you've done pretty well with this pregnancy. 7 months, haven't you?" he grumbled. "Yeah, but now I'll be exhausted after lunch," I giggled. "Do you want me to carry you?" he asked, taking me in his arms and lifting me up. As he did so, he accidentally, or maybe on purpose, lightly stroked my body with his hand as he lifted me up. "Avilam sapas lefutot agerinsemen." I squealed, and he laughed and spun me around in his arms a few times, saying, "Wee!" When he stopped, we chatted some more as he continued to hug me. I started to feel uncomfortable as thoughts of sex swamped my mind. After he hugged me and we chatted for about 5 or 6 minutes, I told him I was starting to feel tired and told him we should leave. "Suit yourself, I don't mind," he replied, grinning his teeth. We showered, changed into shorts and tops, which we had also brought with us in our swimsuit bags so we wouldn't have to wear sweat-soaked jogging clothes, and slowly walked back to our apartments. By the time I got to the apartment door, I was pretty exhausted. Kurt offered to make me lunch. "If I can stay awake to eat it, that'll be great," I muttered as we walked into his apartment. Kurt bought me yogurt, made me a delicious turkey sandwich, brought me iced tea, and we sat down at the table. "You're not eating anything?" I asked, having already finished my yogurt and made a dent in my sandwich. "Not yet," he replied with a suspicious smirk. "But you look tense. Can I stroke your shoulders?" "Oh, no need," I replied, chewing on my sandwich. But before I could object, he got up from his chair, got behind me, and gave me the most delightful shoulder and upper back rub I could remember. After a few more bites of sandwich, all I could concentrate on was the amazing shoulder massage. I finally gave up trying to finish my lunch and just leaned back and received the delight of the massage. I felt myself starting to fall asleep when Kurt stopped, walked over to my chair, and took me in his arms. I was very excited, but I asked him a couple times, "Why are you carrying me?" He didn't answer anything. Before I realized it, I found myself lying on my back on the bed in Kurt's second bedroom. I was like a blur. I was so tired when I realized Kurt was pulling down my shorts and underwear. "What are you doing?" was about all I had time to say before those articles of clothing were removed, and suddenly his tongue was touching my body. I know I wriggled and protested, but it was half-hearted at best, because the removal of the underwear caused my infatuation with sex to flood my brain with endorphins. The next few minutes felt like a dream. I had an altered state of reality. I unconsciously straddled Kurt's hips as he lowered himself onto the bed and began to have sex with me. I experienced probably the greatest pleasure of my life as Kurt continued to have sex with me. I came to my senses after a while with Kurt lying next to me while I mumbled something unintelligible. The most serene feeling of my life swept over me and I fell asleep, no doubt with his mouth still on one of my pregnancy-enhanced breasts. I don't know how much time passed, but the next thing I knew, I realized I was lying on my side with Kurt pressing me against him, trying to have sex with me again. It felt so good. The question flashed through my mind, what am I doing? When I finally came out of my stupor and looked at the alarm clock by the bed, although I couldn't focus, it appeared that I had either had sex or I had been asleep for about 3 hours. I was covered with a sheet. As I stirred, Kurt came into the room, sat down next to me, and stroked my head. "I've had the greatest pleasure of my life," he whispered, looking me straight in the eyes. "Brittany doesn't want kids, and I've had an unrealized pregnancy fantasy since I was 18. This was news to me, but it certainly explained his ardor. "I tried to resist you, but I couldn't," I blurted out. Apparently, that's what my ego was telling me. "I'm glad I couldn't resist you. It was so far outside of normal sex that it was in another universe," I muttered honestly. Kurt's smile grew even wider. "You know, I've wanted to make love to a pregnant woman my whole life, and here I got the most attractive pregnant woman I've ever seen. And she lives right next door, and for the next couple of months, I'm going to aim for the gold as often as I can," he murmured. "What makes you think I'll let you?" I asked with a smile. "What makes you think you can stop me?" he grinned back. He then flipped me onto my other side, kissed me a few times, and had sex with me again. This time I didn't pass out, and it was even more pleasurable than when I did it. Kurt literally made me take a shower, remembering to wash off the traces of lovemaking and giving my breasts more attention than they needed. Then he dressed me and literally carried me in his arms to the apartment, which wasn't too hard considering my pumped-up body. He sat me down on the couch, put a pillow behind my back and another behind my head, and then kissed me. "I intend to have sex with you until you give birth," he stated nonchalantly. "How dare you?" I giggled. "I'll find a way to stop you." He kissed me again and left. For the rest of the afternoon and evening, I was like a zombie. I could barely make a simple dinner, and the conversation with Brian flew in one ear and out the other without me realizing anything. "What's wrong with you, pregnant?" he asked finally, with humor, not anger. "I practiced too much today and I still can't recover. I can't believe I did that. Kurt asked me to run and swim with him and I foolishly agreed. That's the last time," I grinned. Even though I said it out loud, my mind immediately flashed, but not for what happened next. That day marked the beginning of a phase of my sex life in which I clenched my toes, screamed like a banshee, and fell into a comatose state. That asshole Kurt made love to me twice every weekday. I bought an illustrated book of safe positions for pregnant women. I became a sex addict. I tried to get Brian to make love to me in some of the positions described in the book, but I realized that he was only doing it to satisfy me and that it wasn't that arousing to him. However, since Kurt was totally thrilled to be having sex with me, it didn't make any difference and I never complained to Brian. The most glaring incident occurred when I was 8.5 months pregnant, and Brian and Brittany were out of town that same night. Kurt and I spent the night together, the only time we could do that, and I'm pretty sure he made love to me all night. I was flying on clouds as Kurt made love to me in my bed around my due date, when suddenly I felt a jolt. "Trisha," he said with a note of panic in his voice, "your water broke." Kurt rushed me to the hospital and called Brian on the way. When Brian arrived, he thanked Kurt profusely for getting me there, and then Kurt left. That night I gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Beth, weighing 7 pounds 10 ounces. The labor was short and thankfully without complications. Kurt and Brittany came to visit me at the hospital the next evening while I was breastfeeding Beth. We chatted happily. They marveled at how beautiful Beth was, and then Brian walked in, proud as a peacock. After they left, Kurt returned, pretending he'd forgotten something. "Wherever our paths take us, you'll be sure to tell me if you get pregnant again, won't you?" he hummed. "Yes," I exclaimed, then giggled. "Thanks for making my pregnancy the highlight of my sex life, lover boy," I giggled. "Believe me when I tell you that the pleasure was entirely mine," he replied, squeezing my hand and stroking Beth's head. 6 months after Beth was born, our little family moved to a house 10 miles from our apartment complex. Kurt, Brittany, and a few other friends helped us pack. As we ate pizza and drank beer after the van was loaded, Brian, the ultimate proud dad, announced, "I love being a dad so much I can't wait until Trisha gets pregnant again." I whispered to Kurt, "I wonder if he would wait like that if he knew what happened last time and what was sure to happen in the future?" Kurt blushed and pulled up his pants. I giggled. "The end. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you."